Psalm 57 is what I want to look at again today, and let's read the whole psalm together. If you have your Bible or device, open it with me to Psalm 57. We established yesterday that this psalm is David in a cave, okay? He is running from Saul, running for his life. Imagine this. He's been anointed to be king, but he's not taken the throne yet. He's waiting on God's timing, which there's a whole lesson there on having a sense of God's call, but letting God do the work, letting God shape and prepare and move the pieces. Sometimes we force things on our own instead of just letting God's timing unfold. We get so impatient. And just the fact that this psalm exists is such a great testament to David's patience. Instead of engaging and fighting and warring against Saul, God's anointed, David, knowing that he would be the next king, is willing to undergo all of this envy and jealousy and persecution, slander from Saul, and run from it and hide from it, and chooses, instead of justifying himself, defending himself, instead of engaging in a fleshly warfare, he chooses spiritual war. He chooses to hide in God. He chooses praise and prayer and patience. And in the patience, waiting, he is isolated now. He's in this cave. He's barely surviving, really. And he's probably asking God a lot of questions. He's probably going through a lot of emotional turmoil, and yet he knows he's where God has him for the moment. He knows these calamities are going to overpass. And then David uses his poetry, his songwriting, to work through spiritually, to return his heart to where it should be with God and in God's truth. And so we're reading a song of praise, a song of resolution, really, decision making. It's in singing, it's in worshiping that that David is resolving to God how he's going to work through this time. And so with that background, let's read the psalm together. Be merciful unto me, O God. Be merciful unto me, for my soul trusteth in thee. Yea, in the shadow of thy wings will I make my refuge, until these calamities be overpast. I will cry unto God most high, unto God that performeth all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save me from the reproach of him that would swallow me up. Selah. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. My soul is among lions, and I lie even among them that are set on fire, even the sons of men, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me, in the midst whereof they are fallen themselves. Selah. My heart is fixed, O God, my heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise. Awake up, my glory, awake, psaltery and harp. I myself will awake early. I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people. I will sing unto thee among the nations. For thy mercy is great unto the heavens, and thy truth unto the clouds. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. What I want to bring off of this today primarily is that David is making a decision that he's going to trust God even when he doesn't understand God. And that his end goal is that he wants God to be exalted. He wants God to be God. He wants God to orchestrate the circumstances. And as the circumstances are orchestrated by God, he wants to remain surrendered in those circumstances, honoring God, exalting God, praising God, depending on God, waiting upon God. David has found his place and he has fixed his heart. He has found his place and he has fixed his heart. My heart is fixed, O God. I will. See the resolve there? I will sing and give praise. This is where you'll find me. Though I'm in a cave, I'm going to sing in the cave. I'm going to wait in the cave. I know my place, and I am going to patiently wait on my God with a heart of praise. What a profound kind of trust. When God doesn't make sense to us, when circumstances have changed, when the life we thought we were called to live changes in some way, God gives us new assignments, new circumstances, They were off our script, and yet on his, and yet finding our place on his script and knowing that somehow he's going to bring good from this. My first thought this morning when I thought about this pandemic was somehow, some point in the future, we're going to look back on this and say, that was exactly what the world needed. That was exactly what I needed. That was exactly what we needed for that moment and that in time. Now, that's going to be from the vantage point of knowing what God knows, okay? And seeing what God does and what his big picture plan is. I read a story recently of Elizabeth Elliot. She's actually recounting the story of visiting Wales. Let me find this. I want to make sure I get it right here because I notated it. She was teaching at a missions conference. I guess this was 1976. She told of being in Wales and watching a shepherd and his dog, and they were treating their sheep, their rams and their lambs, with antiseptic. They were protecting their sheep from the parasites and the pestilence and the things that would make them sick and would threaten their life and the livelihood of the shepherd. And so the dog was herding the sheep up a ramp and into a tank. And once they were in this tank, the shepherd would then bathe them forcibly, really grab them. The rams, he'd grab by the horns and he would fling them into the tank. They'd try to climb out. He'd throw them back into the tank. Once he got them into the tank, he would literally force them under the antiseptic water and hold them there for several seconds. Mrs. Elliot asked the shepherd's wife, "Do the sheep understand what's going on?" And the shepherd's wife smiled and said, "They haven't got a clue." So imagine the shepherd is doing exactly what is best for the sheep, but the sheep have no way of understanding. They have no way of contextualizing. Why would the shepherd drive me with his dog up this ramp into this tank, force me into it, throw me back into it, force me underwater? Surely he's killing me, right? That's what the sheep is thinking. And yet it was exactly what the sheep needed to be protected from the parasites and the sicknesses and things that would threaten them. And the idea there is that the shepherd we trust is not hurting us. He's always doing what is best for us. And we can trust his heart. We can know that whatever he's doing what is best. It reminds me, I've done this with all three of my kids. Each of these experiences, which was traumatic for them, but progressively less traumatic as we went from Lance to Larry to Haley. But all of them, when they were little, when they were toddler age, needed stitches, and typically around their head somewhere, either the top of their head or under their eye. Or I remember Lance's, I think, was on his forehead somewhere. They bump into something, you know. When you're about 2.5, 3 feet tall, your head just starts coming into contact with all kinds of counters and corners and things that you didn't know existed when all you did was crawl or when you were much shorter. And so our kids would just knock their heads on stuff, and we ended up in the ER. And Dana didn't want to usually be there. She's traumatized by the blood and stuff. So I would end up sitting in the ER or taking the kids back for the stitches. And every time that the doctors would come in and they'd have to bind up my child to keep them from getting in the way and hurting themselves worse during the stitch process. Now, they'd keep exposed the head, the wound area, so that they could get to it, but they needed to really bind up the body of my children. And so I remember with a couple of them, they lay them down, they'd lay them on a sheet, they would wrap the sheet around them and then over their arms and then back under their body. So their arms were literally pulled to like a straitjacket pulled to their body. And then they'd wrap the sheet all the way around them. And then they took a Velcro papoose, literally a papoose, and they wrapped their whole body from the neck down. I mean, just their feet sticking out of the bottom of this papoose, but their whole body like a cocoon. They were wrapped in that. I'll never forget the terror, the shrieks and the shrills and the crying and screaming from my children that they were being wrapped up so forcibly. And I'll never forget, the doctors would let me get up on the table really with my child. And I remember with all three of them having to literally almost lay on the table with them, put my head as close to their face as I could get without impeding the doctor's area that they were working at the head of the table, but I would get just a little bit below that area and literally press my body so close to my child, wrap them up so much in my arms that they were so aware of my presence that they lost their sense of being bound up by the sheet and the papoose. And this is what I see happening with David. And by the way, my children would calm down. As soon as I came close to their face, all of a sudden the pressure wasn't a restraint, it was an embrace. And it turned the trial into a moment of affection. What I see happening to David is because he's in this cave, it could have become a terrible prison cell for him, but instead it became an incredible moment in the presence of God, being embraced by God and understanding God's heart and praising and celebrating the work of God in his life and the hope that he had for his future. So I share those stories with you because maybe you're feeling like you're in the cave, and the cave, I think, is kind of what we make it, okay? We can make it a moment to really draw close to God and cherish him and let him recalibrate us, or we can just let it be dark and cold, and that's a choice. So let our hearts be fixed and let our God be exalted and let us trust him and cry out for his mercy. But let's turn the cave into a moment of singing. Hey, have a great Wednesday. Join me tonight at 7 o'clock for Bible study, and I'm praying for you. I miss you. And thank you, friends. I hope you have a great day.